Picture this. You're scrolling through Instagram on a Tuesday evening, and you see yet another friend posting about their new house purchase. They're standing in front of a beautiful craftsman home with a white picket fence and smiling like they just won the lottery. Your immediate reaction is that familiar sting of comparison mixed with the American dream narrative you've been fed since childhood. Homeownership equals success, right? Homeownership equals building wealth and securing your future and becoming a real adult. What if I told you that in 2026, buying a home might actually be one of the worst financial decisions you could possibly make? Not because there's anything wrong with houses themselves, but because the mathematics of home buying in today's economic climate will systematically destroy your ability to build real wealth. My name is Lenny, and I spend way too much time analyzing real estate markets, mortgage calculations, and the broken promises that the housing industry feeds to young people desperately trying to achieve the American dream. If you're someone who wants to understand the hidden truth about real estate instead of just believing what your parents or your real estate agent tell you, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it challenges everything you thought you knew about home ownership. Now, before you start typing angry comments about how home ownership has historically been a great investment or how paying rent is just throwing money away, let me explain something that will completely shift your perspective on real estate. Most people think about home buying like they think about retirement accounts or stock market investments. You buy now, you hold for 30 years, and you make money. The math seems simple, right? You're building equity instead of paying a landlord. You're locked into a mortgage payment while rent increases every year. You're getting tax deductions on your mortgage interest, except that's only half the story. And the other half is a financial nightmare that nobody talks about at dinner parties. Here's what actually happens when you buy a home in 2026 with today's mortgage rates and today's home prices. The median home price in most American cities has reached absolutely astronomical levels. We're talking $400,000, sometimes well over $600,000 for a basic 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in decent neighborhoods. And when you combine these prices with current mortgage rates hovering around 6% or higher, the monthly payment alone becomes absolutely devastating to your financial future. Let me walk you through some numbers that will make this brutally clear and painful to think about. Let's say you want to buy a modest $400,000 home. You save up for 5 years and manage to scrape together a $40,000 down payment, which means you need to borrow $360,000. That's already a horrible scenario because you're only putting down 10%, which means you're also paying private mortgage insurance on top of everything else, adding another $300 to $400 per month to your payment. But let's assume you find a mortgage at 6% interest for 30 years. Your monthly principal and interest payment alone comes to approximately $2,160. Add in property taxes, which average around $300 to $400 per month depending on your location. Add in homeowner's insurance, which will cost you another $150 to $200 per month. Add in that private mortgage insurance because you didn't have enough for a 20% down payment, which is another $300 to $400 per month. Add in maintenance and repairs, which financial advisors estimate at 1% of the home's value annually, which works out to roughly $330 per month. Now suddenly, your affordable $400,000 home is costing you over $3,500 per month just to own it. And that's before utilities, before HOA fees if you're in a planned community, before the catastrophic repairs that always seem to happen right when you don't have money available. Compare that to renting the same property. The exact same house that costs $3,500 per month in mortgage payments might rent for $2,200 to $2,500 per month. You just got hit with a $1,000 to $1,300 monthly financial body blow, and that's not even accounting for the fact that renters don't have to worry about the roof leaking or the HVAC system dying or the foundation cracking. They call the landlord and walk away. As a homeowner, you're stuck with a $15,000 bill for a new roof and absolutely no choice but to pay it. But here's where the real financial destruction becomes clear. Imagine you took that same money and followed the strategy from my earlier video about reaching $25,000 as your wealth building foundation. Instead of scraping together a down payment for a house, you invested that money aggressively in index funds and retirement accounts. Over 30 years, the difference in wealth building is absolutely staggering. The person who bought the $400,000 house is paying $3,500 per month for 30 years, which adds up to $1.26 million in total payments. At the end of 30 years, they own a house that's probably worth somewhere around $900,000 to $1.2 million, depending on appreciation. But they've also spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on maintenance, repairs, and property taxes. The net wealth building is maybe $200,000 after accounting for all the costs that homeowners conveniently forget about in their calculations. Meanwhile, the person who rented for $2,200 per month and invested the $1,300 monthly difference was able to contribute to their investment accounts aggressively. That $1,300 per month invested at an average 8% return over 30 years accumulates to approximately $1.84 million. And that's just from the difference in monthly payments, not even counting the thousands of dollars they didn't spend on repairs and maintenance. The renter is ending up with nearly twice the wealth of the homeowner, and they didn't have to deal with a single burst pipe or faulty electrical panel. But this is where the psychological manipulation really kicks in, and it's something that real estate agents and the housing industry work overtime to hide from you. They focus obsessively on the concept of building equity, as if paying down a mortgage principal is somehow magical wealth building compared to any other investment. They point to historical home appreciation and claim that real estate always goes up in value, conveniently ignoring the 2008 financial crisis, when millions of homeowners watched their properties lose 30, 40, sometimes 50% of their value overnight. They tell you that rent goes up every year, but your mortgage payment stays the same, which is technically true but completely misleading because they're not factoring in the massive increases in property taxes and insurance that absolutely devastate homeowners over time. Property taxes alone can double or even triple over the course of a 30-year mortgage, turning that initially affordable payment into an unbearable burden. Let's talk about something that absolutely nobody discusses when they're pressuring you to buy a home. It's called opportunity cost, and it's the most underrated financial concept that separates wealthy people from those who get trapped in the middle class forever. When you buy a home, you're locking hundreds of thousands of dollars into a single illiquid asset that you cannot access quickly or easily. That $40,000 down payment, that's $40,000 that could have been invested in diversified index funds, earning returns and giving you financial flexibility. That $1,300 monthly difference between renting and buying, that's $1,300 per month that you could have been investing to build real wealth and maintain optionality in your life. Optionality is the ability to change your life circumstances without taking a devastating financial hit. Homeowners have zero optionality. If you lose your job and need to move to find work, you can't just walk away from your house. You either sell it in a panic at a loss, or you try to rent it out and become an accidental landlord dealing with tenant problems and maintenance emergencies from 1,000 miles away. If you want to change careers and take a significant pay cut to do something more meaningful, you're trapped by your mortgage payment. If an unexpected opportunity comes along that requires you to relocate, you're stuck. The house owns you more than you own the house. Meanwhile, renters can pick up and move whenever they want. New opportunity in a different city? Pack your stuff and go. Hate your current situation? Give notice and try something different. Want to travel for a year and work remotely? Rent a place short-term and explore the world without worrying about pipes freezing in your absence. This freedom has immense value and it's worth paying a premium for, yet the housing industry has convinced us that it's somehow unwise or foolish to rent. Now let's address the interest component of your mortgage, because this is where the financial system really gets its hooks into you. When you take out a $360,000 mortgage at 6% interest for 30 years, approximately 70% of your total payments go to interest. You're paying the bank roughly $250,000 just for the privilege of borrowing money. That's $250,000 that provides zero benefit to you and zero equity in your home. It's pure wealth transfer from your pocket to the bank's shareholders. Compare this to investing. When you invest money in index funds, there's no interest payment. There's no middleman taking a massive cut. You're investing your capital and any returns go directly to you. Over 30 years, this difference in how your money works is absolutely catastrophic to your financial future. Let me share something else that keeps me up at night when I think about young people buying homes in 2026. Interest rate risk is real, and it's something that almost nobody factors into their home buying decision until it's too late. Right now, mortgage rates are around 6%. They've been higher historically, and they could definitely go higher in the future. But here's what people don't think about. Once you buy a home, you're locked in at whatever rate you get. If you buy at 6% and rates drop to 4%, you can refinance. But that process costs thousands of dollars and takes months. More importantly, if you buy at 6% and then rates spike to 8 or 9% due to inflation or economic conditions, you're stuck. You can't refinance for a lower rate, you're just stuck paying an increasingly expensive mortgage while newer buyers get better terms. This creates a vicious cycle where home prices actually become constrained by affordable mortgage payments. If rates are 9% and someone can only afford a $200,000 mortgage, then home prices can't rise much higher because nobody can qualify for the loans to pay those prices. This is why homeowners in high interest rate environments actually suffer from declining property values. The math doesn't work anymore for buyers, so sellers have to lower prices. Meanwhile, you're stuck holding a depreciating asset while paying interest rates that make your mortgage feel like a burden rather than an investment. But here's the most insidious aspect of home buying that the industry actively works to hide from you. It's called the illusion of inflation protection. Real estate agents will tell you that you need to buy now, because houses protect you from inflation. Your mortgage payment stays the same for 30 years while inflation erodes that payment, and you're essentially paying back the bank with cheaper dollars. This is technically true, but it's also spectacularly misleading because they're ignoring all the other expenses associated with home ownership that absolutely explode with inflation. Your property taxes don't stay flat. They go up every single year, often at rates that exceed general inflation because local governments need more money. Your homeowner's insurance doesn't stay flat. It goes up significantly as replacement costs increase. Your maintenance costs don't stay flat. That $330 monthly estimate for repairs, good luck maintaining that level when inflation pushes construction costs through the roof. Many homeowners buying in 2026 are going to discover in 2035 that their monthly housing costs have increased by 30, 40, sometimes 50% despite their mortgage payments staying theoretically the same. The principal and interest are flat, but everything else about home ownership gets exponentially more expensive. Meanwhile, the person who invested the difference is sitting on a portfolio worth millions of dollars while renting for whatever the market rate happens to be. And here's the beautiful part about being a renter and an investor. You have flexibility. If your rent becomes too expensive in your city, you move somewhere cheaper. You cut your housing costs dramatically and invest even more. A homeowner is stuck paying property taxes and insurance in a place they might not even want to live anymore because they're chained to their real estate. Let's talk about the human psychology that makes home buying so financially destructive, because understanding this is key to protecting your financial future. There's something deeply emotional about home ownership in American culture. We're raised with the idea that owning a home is the ultimate achievement, the final proof that you're an adult who has made something of yourself. Renting feels temporary and immature, like you're still waiting for your real life to begin. Buying a home feels like you're finally arriving, finally becoming part of the establishment, finally proving to your parents that you made the right choices. This emotional component is so powerful that it overrides rational financial thinking in most people. Real estate agents understand this psychology intimately, and they exploit it ruthlessly. They show you homes and they talk about memories you'll make there. They use words like investment and building equity and forever home to tap into your deepest emotional desires. They subtly suggest that renters are wasting money, that they're somehow less successful, that they'll never build wealth. They create artificial urgency by talking about how fast homes are selling, how competitive the market is, how you need to act now or miss out forever. They're not providing financial advice. They're providing emotional manipulation designed to get you to spend the largest amount of money you've ever committed to in your entire life. And once you buy, they disappear. They got their commission, and they're on to the next client. You're left holding a $400,000 asset that's illiquid, expensive to maintain, and increasingly feeling like a burden rather than a blessing. The pride you felt at closing day has worn off, and you're now staring at the reality of $3,500 monthly payments for the next 30 years. This is when the regret typically sets in, but by then it's too late. You've already signed the papers and the financial damage has been done. But let's talk about what actually happens to people who buy homes in expensive markets in 2026. They enter what I call the golden handcuffs phase of their financial lives. They have a roof over their head, which is good, but they've also surrendered the majority of their financial flexibility for the next 3 decades. A promotion that requires relocation, can't take it without selling the house. A business opportunity that requires capital, can't access the equity in your home without refinancing at today's expensive rates. A family emergency that requires liquid cash, your wealth is tied up in a house and unavailable. Compare this to someone who rented and invested. They have millions of dollars sitting in liquid investment accounts. They can access capital instantly. They can take lower paying opportunities because their living expenses are low and they have investment income. They can start businesses, they can take sabbaticals, they can handle emergencies without panic. They have genuine financial freedom, while the homeowner has financial imprisonment disguised as success. The homeowner is making more than enough money to pay the mortgage, so they look successful to everyone around them. But underneath, they're trapped. They're prisoners of their own real estate, chained to their job because they need the income to service the debt. Now, I want to address something that people always bring up when I suggest renting instead of buying. They say, "But Lenny, what about building equity? At least with a mortgage, I'm building wealth instead of paying a landlord to build wealth." This argument is so deeply flawed that I'm almost embarrassed to have to address it, but it persists because the housing industry loves this narrative. Yes, you're paying down a mortgage principal and technically building equity, but you're doing it incredibly inefficiently compared to other investment options. You're borrowing $360,000 to build equity, which means you're paying $250,000 in interest just to do it. You're also paying massive transaction costs when you buy and sell. You're paying real estate agent commissions of about 5% of the sale price, which on a $400,000 home is $20,000 gone. Compare this to the person who invested the difference. They don't pay any commissions, they don't pay any interest, they don't pay any closing costs. Every dollar they invest goes directly to building their wealth. Over 30 years, this difference is enormous. The homeowner built $200,000 to $400,000 in home equity through a process that cost hundreds of thousands in interest and fees. The investor built $1.84 million in portfolio wealth through a process that cost essentially nothing. The investor built 5 to 10 times more wealth using the same amount of time and did it in a dramatically more efficient way. But here's what really makes home buying in 2026 such a terrible decision. And this is something that almost nobody talks about honestly. The current prices we're seeing are likely the peak of a residential real estate bubble. Home prices have increased so dramatically relative to incomes that the fundamental math no longer works. In most major cities, the price-to-income ratio has reached levels not seen since 2007, right before the housing market crashed spectacularly. This isn't speculation or market pessimism, this is basic mathematics. If the median home price in your city is $500,000 and the median household income is $80,000, then homes are 10 times household income. That's historically unsustainable. Prices eventually have to fall or incomes have to catch up, and incomes don't grow that fast. When prices do fall, and they will at some point, the home buyer is taking on significant downside risk. You could buy a $400,000 home in 2026 and watch it become worth $300,000 in 2031. When the market corrects, you're locked into a $360,000 mortgage on a $320,000 asset. You're underwater on your home. You can't sell without taking a massive loss. You can't walk away because you're legally obligated to repay the mortgage. You're trapped. Meanwhile, the investor who rented and invested has no exposure to this risk. Their wealth is diversified across hundreds of stocks and bonds. They're not concentrated in a single illiquid asset that could decline 30%. The worst part is that this downside risk is asymmetrical. If you buy and the market crashes, you lose huge amounts of wealth. If you rent and the market crashes, you don't lose anything. You didn't have wealth concentrated in the asset that crashed. If you buy and the market goes up, you make maybe 4 or 5% annually on your invested equity in the home, assuming you even have equity and it's not wiped out by costs. If you rent and invest, you can make 8 to 10% annually on diversified investments. The upside is better if you invest, and the downside is worse if you buy. It's the worst possible risk-reward trade-off. Let me share something that will probably make some people angry, but it needs to be said. The push for home ownership in America is largely driven by the financial incentives of people in the real estate industry, not by what's actually best for your finances. Real estate agents make 5% commission on home sales. Banks make money on mortgages. Construction companies make money building houses. Furniture companies make money selling stuff to fill houses. There's an absolutely enormous financial incentive for the entire system to convince you that home ownership is the path to success and wealth. This industry is worth trillions of dollars, and they're not going to let facts and mathematics get in the way of convincing you to participate. Now let's talk about what you should actually do with your money instead of buying a home in 2026. The first step is to recognize that housing is an expense, not an investment. You need a place to live, that's fine. Rent somewhere decent for a reasonable price, but don't confuse an expense with an investment. Investments generate returns. They compound, they make you wealthier. Your house doesn't do any of these things. It costs you money every single month, and it becomes less valuable over time as it ages. It's a consumption good like a car or a boat, not an investment. Once you've accepted that housing is an expense, you can start thinking clearly about minimizing that expense and maximizing your actual investments. Rent a place for $2,000 per month instead of buying for $3,500. Take that $1,500 monthly difference and invest it aggressively in tax-advantaged accounts and index funds. Over 10 years, that's $180,000 that you've invested. Over 30 years, that's $540,000. When you factor in compound returns at 8% annually, that $540,000 in contributions becomes over $1.8 million. That's real wealth. That's optionality. That's freedom. But here's the thing that requires discipline and psychological strength. You have to be willing to rent while everyone around you is buying. Your parents might judge you for still renting at 40 years old. Your friends might pity you for not having a forever home. Your coworkers might assume you're not doing well financially because you don't have a mortgage payment that exceeds your take-home pay. You have to have the intellectual courage to ignore all of these social pressures and make the financially optimal decision anyway. This is the defining characteristic of truly wealthy people. They're willing to look foolish to the average person in order to make mathematically superior choices. Think about what this means in practical terms over your lifetime. You're not just avoiding a bad financial decision. You're making dozens of small financially superior decisions that compound over time. You're investing instead of buying. You're renting in cheaper areas when possible. You're maximizing tax advantage accounts. You're maintaining flexibility and optionality in your life. Each decision is slightly better than the status quo alternative, and when you string together 30 years of these slightly better decisions, you end up with millions of dollars more wealth than the average person. This is why buying a home in 2026 is likely to ruin your finances. Not because there's anything wrong with houses or because home ownership is inherently bad. It's that the current market conditions make home buying catastrophically inefficient relative to renting and investing. The prices are too high relative to incomes, the mortgage rates are too high, the transaction costs are too high, the opportunity cost is too high. Every single variable points toward renting being the superior financial choice, yet the entire cultural and financial system is aligned to push you toward buying anyway. Start running the actual math on your specific situation today, because in 20 years, you'll either be thanking yourself for making the hard choice to rent and invest, or you'll be wondering what could have been if you hadn't been convinced by the real estate industry that buying was the path to success. The math is clear, the choice is yours. Don't let emotions and cultural pressure ruin your financial future.